When people talk about looking expensive, they usually think about clothes, cars, or some level of privilege that feels out of reach. But the truth is, the most expensive looking people aren't defined by what they own. They're defined by how they move, how they speak, and how they carry themselves in a room. Expensive isn't a price tag, it's a presence. And today, you're about to learn the behaviors that quietly signal confidence, composure, and high value, behaviors anyone can master. Calm presence is one of the most quietly powerful behaviors a person can cultivate because it sends a message long before you ever speak. When you walk into a room with steadiness instead of urgency, people feel it. They sense that you're not operating from a place of fear, insecurity, or a need for approval. You become someone who looks like they have time, control, and clarity, and that alone creates an expensive aura. Calm presence isn't about being emotionless. It's about being centered enough that your emotions don't leak into every situation. When you allow yourself to slow down your reactions, you give your mind space to think instead of just respond. Most people react instantly because they worry about what others will think or they fear losing control of a moment. When you operate calmly, you show that you're already in control, which automatically elevates your presence in any environment. Another part of calm presence is choosing your words with intention. When you don't rush to fill silence, the silence becomes part of your strength. People who look expensive don't talk to prove themselves. They speak because they have something worth saying. That small shift changes the entire energy of a conversation. Others lean in. They pay closer attention. They interpret your calmness as confidence, even if you're still learning to build it internally. Calm presence becomes a kind of strategy that rewires how people see you and how you see yourself. Developing this presence also means learning to control your breathing and your pace. When you breathe slowly and deeply, your body and your voice follow that rhythm. Your words come out steady. Your tone becomes smoother. Your movements look intentional rather than reactive. This makes you appear more grounded and self-assured even during pressure or conflict. People naturally trust and follow those who seem emotionally steady because steadiness feels safe. Safety feels strong, and strong feels expensive in a world where most people are overstimulated and overwhelmed. Calm presence also shows up in how you handle chaos. When everyone else is panicking, complaining, or spiraling, you stay composed, not cold, composed. This doesn't mean you avoid problems. It means you approach them with clarity instead of noise. That gives you an advantage because composure sharpens your judgment. Others may lose themselves in the moment, but you stay anchored. That kind of behavior creates respect without you ever having to demand it. It makes people assume you have experience, wisdom, or insight, even if you're still figuring things out like everyone else. Another layer of expensive calm is understanding that not every situation deserves your reaction. People who look and feel expensive don't respond to everything that tries to pull their focus or disrupt their peace. They choose what's worth engaging in, and they let the rest pass by without absorbing it. This selective engagement protects your emotional energy and makes your presence feel more valuable. You stop giving out immediate reactions, explanations, or defenses. You start moving with a kind of inner quiet that speaks louder than anything you could say. Mastering calm presence also means trusting silence. Silence is one of the most underrated tools for looking powerful. When you pause before answering, it shows you're thinking instead of reacting. It signals that you're not rushed, not intimidated, and not trying to please. It turns your responses into choices, not impulses. People start noticing that you don't break your own rhythm just to match someone else's. They adapt to you, which shifts the dynamics of every interaction in your favor. When you adopt calm presence consistently, it becomes part of your identity and the foundation of how you move through the world. It makes everything you do look more intentional, more composed, and more elevated, regardless of your background, your appearance, or your circumstances. Small habits create big impressions because most of what people notice about you isn't the dramatic moments, but the subtle, repeated behaviors that slowly form an image of who you are. When someone looks expensive, it's rarely because of one big action. It's because of the hundreds of micro choices they make every day that signal discipline, control, and intention. These small habits shape the energy you carry, the way you speak, the way you enter a room, and the way others feel in your presence. People pay attention to consistency more than perfection, and when your daily habits reflect order and clarity, you start projecting a presence that feels elevated. Small habits are also the easiest to overlook, which is why they have so much impact. Most people dismiss them because they seem too simple, too quiet, or too insignificant to matter, but that's where the real advantage lies. When you consistently practice small, refined behaviors, you give off an impression that feels effortless, even though it's carefully built through discipline and self-respect. These habits show up in the way you take care of your physical presence. A person who looks expensive often carries a clean, polished energy, not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because their standards for themselves are higher than what the world expects. Things like speaking clearly, keeping your posture lifted, walking with purpose, or maintaining a calm tone become silent indicators of inner order. These habits communicate that you take yourself seriously, and people mirror that energy back to you without you ever asking for it. Small habits also create the emotional tone people associate with you. If you consistently approach situations with thoughtfulness rather than urgency, people begin to trust your presence. If you avoid gossip, complaining, or attention-seeking behavior, you start to feel like someone who values their peace over noise. These little choices may not seem like much in the moment, but over time, they form an identity that others perceive as high value. Another small habit that creates a big impression is the way you respond instead of react. Pausing before speaking, choosing your words carefully, and refusing to let impulses guide your behavior all signal maturity and emotional intelligence. People who look expensive aren't impulsive with their emotions or their attention. They think before they speak, they observe before they decide, and they choose calm over chaos. These habits build an internal structure that allows you to move more intentionally through life. The person who reacts to everything ends up looking scattered. The person who responds with calm intention looks powerful. Small habits also show up in how you handle your personal boundaries. You become selective about what you give your time to, who you let close to you, and what energy you allow into your world. You stop saying yes out of guilt or fear and start choosing based on alignment. This habit alone shifts how people perceive you because someone who protects their peace automatically appears more valuable than someone who gives themselves away easily. Even the way you manage your attention becomes an expensive-looking behavior. When you're fully present in conversations, when you listen instead of waiting to talk, when you make eye contact without staring down your phone, you create a sense of presence that is rare. People remember how you make them feel, and small habits of presence make others feel respected and seen. That feeling elevates your value in their mind without you having to do anything dramatic. Small habits also stack on top of each other. When you practice calm communication, grounded posture, emotional discipline, and selective attention, the combination creates a presence that feels elegant and self-assured. You don't have to announce your confidence. It becomes visible through your behavior. Over time, these habits form a kind of personal signature. People start associating you with steadiness, intention, and inner order. And that's what gives you the expensive look. Not the clothes you wear or the lifestyle you have, but the way your behavior consistently reflects clarity, confidence, and self-respect. The calmest person in the room always looks the most powerful because calm energy doesn't just reflect confidence, it announces it without a single word. When you hold yourself with steady, grounded composure, you immediately separate yourself from the noise around you. People instinctively gravitate toward the person who seems unbothered, unshaken, and fully present in their own body. Calmness sends a message that you're not threatened by the environment, you're not overwhelmed by the moment, and you're not competing for attention. It shows that you're anchored internally instead of being tossed around by whatever is happening externally. This kind of presence always feels expensive because it's rare. Most people react fast, talk fast, and think fast because they're trying to keep up with the world around them. But when you slow down your reactions, when you move with intention rather than urgency, you appear like someone who has mastered themselves, and that mastery reads as strength. Being the calmest person in the room starts with how you breathe and how you hold your body. Your breath sets your pace, and your pace affects your energy. When your breathing is slow and steady, your voice becomes smoother, your posture becomes more controlled, and your movements become deliberate. You stop fidgeting, rushing, or forcing anything. You take up space in a different way. Instead of pushing your presence outward, you let it settle inward, and the quiet confidence that comes from that is noticeable. Calm energy doesn't have to fight for the room. The room adjusts to it naturally. People lean in to listen. They study your expressions. They treat your words with more weight because they're not diluted by panic or urgency. Another reason calmness looks powerful is because it creates contrast. In any group, emotions bounce around quickly. Stress spreads, insecurity spreads, excitement spreads. But when you remain grounded while others are escalating, people can't help but notice you. You become the emotional anchor in the space. You look like the one with perspective, the one who can think clearly while others are overwhelmed, and the one who can stay centered regardless of the circumstances. That contrast elevates you instantly because people interpret calmness as control. And control is one of the most expensive-looking traits a person can display. Calmness also changes how you communicate. When you don't rush to respond, when you take a brief pause before speaking, when your tone is even and your words are intentional, people take you more seriously. They don't hear insecurity in your voice. They hear certainty, they hear self-respect, they hear someone who doesn't need to win approval or dominate the moment to feel secure. In a world where so many people speak from anxiety or ego, the person who communicates with calm clarity stands out. Your calmness becomes a filter that removes unnecessary noise. You stop explaining too much, apologizing too much, or trying too hard. Every word feels more deliberate, which makes your presence feel more valuable. Being the calmest person in the room also shows emotional maturity. It tells people that you don't let chaos control you and you don't hand your reactions over to other people. You regulate yourself, and that ability is deeply respected. You stop matching the energy of people who are irritated, dramatic, or reactive. You respond from your standards, not the moment's emotion. This level of self-regulation makes you appear composed even when you're dealing with something challenging. It creates a sense of stability that others appreciate and trust. People feel safer around someone who doesn't get pulled into every emotional wave. Another layer of calm power comes from the fact that calmness implies confidence in your own pace. When you're calm, you're not rushing to prove anything. You're not performing for approval. You're not trying to force an outcome. You trust yourself enough to stay steady, and that trust radiates through your body language, your tone, and your decisions. Calm people make others feel like they know something the rest of the room hasn't figured out yet. It's an energy that communicates competence without any effort. Over time, when you consistently show up as the calmest person in the room, people begin to see you as a leader even if you never claim the role. They look to you during uncertainty. They respect your presence without you asking for respect. They associate you with strength, clarity, and inner authority. And that is what makes calmness not just attractive, but undeniably expensive looking. Energy speaks louder than appearance because people respond to what they feel from you long before they process what you're wearing, what you own, or how you look. The most expensive-looking individuals carry an energy that communicates certainty, ease, and self-respect, and that energy becomes their signature before anything else. When your energy is grounded, steady, and intentional, you create an invisible presence that influences how others perceive you. People may not be able to explain it, but they sense it. They sense when someone is centered, when someone is unbothered, when someone is confident without having to broadcast it. That feeling is what makes a person seem high value. Appearance can turn a head for a moment, but energy makes someone unforgettable. In every room, people instinctively scan for the person with the clearest internal presence, and that presence is built from the energy you bring, not the image you wear. Energy becomes your communication long before you speak. Your tone, your pace, your posture, your eye contact, and even the quiet between your words all create signals that shape how others respond to you. When your energy is calm rather than chaotic, people feel it. When your movements are intentional instead of frantic, people feel it. When you carry yourself like you're comfortable in your own skin rather than performing for validation, people feel it. Even small interactions like greeting someone, walking into a space, or listening during a conversation reveal your internal state. You can dress elegantly, but if your energy is anxious, rushed, or reactive, the elegance disappears. On the other hand, someone with controlled, steady energy can walk into a room wearing something simple and still look elevated, because it's not the outfit that's expensive, it's the way the person wears themselves. Energy is shaped by what you allow to influence you. When you let every external situation impact your mood, when you absorb negativity from others, when you let irritation dictate your behavior, your energy becomes unstable and people sense it instantly. But when you choose to stay grounded, when you learn to separate someone else's emotion from your own response, when you stay consistent despite the unpredictability around you, your energy becomes a shield rather than a sponge. People respond to that. They feel safer around you. They feel calmer around you. They feel like they're in the presence of someone who has a strong inner foundation, and that feeling elevates you. Expensive energy is rooted in self-control, and self-control is something you build over time by deciding what gets your reaction and what doesn't. Another layer of powerful energy comes from the way you treat your own boundaries. When you're clear about what you tolerate, what you accept, and what you engage with, your energy becomes more defined. People can feel when someone has soft boundaries because their energy becomes easily pulled, drained, or manipulated. But someone with strong, quiet boundaries carries an energy of self-respect that others instinctively recognize. You become someone who doesn't chase, doesn't cling, and doesn't overextend. That restraint makes your presence feel more valuable because people sense that your attention isn't freely given, it's earned. That alone makes your energy come across as elevated. Energy also comes from what you repeat daily. The way you wake up, the way you talk to yourself, the way you handle frustration, the way you set your tone in the morning and maintain it throughout the day. These habits create an emotional climate inside you that others feel externally. People with expensive-looking energy don't get there by accident. They get there by practicing emotional discipline, by refining their reactions, by choosing peace over chaos, and by aligning their behavior with their standards rather than their impulses. It's not perfection, it's consistency. Every small choice builds the energy you carry, and over time, that energy becomes your identity. When your energy is aligned, everything else feels more elevated. Your gestures look more refined. Your posture becomes more confident. Your voice becomes clearer. Your presence becomes stronger. People stop focusing on what you're wearing and start focusing on how you make them feel. And the way you make people feel is what stays with them long after you leave the room. That is why energy will always speak louder than appearance, and why mastering your inner state will make you look more expensive than anything you could ever put on your body. High-value behavior is a daily practice because the way you show up in small, ordinary moments shapes how you're perceived long before the big moments ever arrive. Most people try to look impressive when they think it matters, but real value is built in the quiet routines, the subtle self-discipline, and the decisions you make when no one is watching. It's not a performance or a temporary switch you flip on when you want to appear confident or elevated. It's an ongoing commitment to the standards you've set for yourself. When you treat high-value behavior as a daily practice, you become consistent. And consistency is what makes people trust your presence, your words, and your energy. It's what creates that expensive-looking aura that doesn't rely on appearance, but on the strength of your character and the stability of your choices. Practicing it daily means you don't rely on the moment to define you. You define the moment by the habits you've already built into who you are. This daily practice shows up in the way you manage your reactions. Instead of being pulled into irritation, gossip, confusion, or chaos, you choose composure. You choose restraint. You choose clarity over emotional noise. High-value behavior means you respond with intention instead of reacting from impulse, and that kind of self-control makes you appear more grounded than the average person. People feel that discipline even when they don't understand it consciously. It becomes part of the energy you bring into every room. Practicing this every single day trains your mind to filter what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Over time, fewer things trigger you, fewer people derail you, and fewer situations pull you away from your centered state. That emotional steadiness is one of the most valuable traits a person can have because it makes you feel safe, stable, and unshakable. High-value behavior is also reflected in how you communicate. You don't speak just to fill silence. You don't overshare just to feel connected. You don't over-explain to manage people's perceptions. You speak with clarity, confidence, and intention. This becomes a daily practice when you choose your words carefully, when you allow pauses instead of rushing, and when you respect yourself enough to communicate with purpose. People notice this. They notice when someone doesn't waste their own voice. They notice when someone listens fully before responding. They notice the difference between someone who talks to be heard versus someone who talks to add value. Practicing this every day builds a reputation for being articulate, thoughtful, and emotionally intelligent, traits that make you stand out without trying. Another part of daily high-value behavior is how you handle your personal boundaries. You maintain them not on special occasions, but all the time. You don't let people push past your limits for convenience. You don't adjust your standards depending on who you're around. You don't abandon your self-respect to keep the peace. Practicing boundaries daily means you say no with confidence, you protect your time without guilt, and you choose relationships that align with your emotional health rather than your fears. People can sense when your boundaries are firm but graceful, and that makes your presence feel rare. It shows that your attention, your energy, and your presence are earned, not given away freely. High-value behavior also shows up in the way you treat yourself privately. The discipline you apply to your routines, your habits, your hygiene, your environment, and your emotional well-being is part of the identity you carry into the world. When you show yourself consistency, your confidence becomes natural. When you treat yourself with care, your presence becomes stronger. When you keep promises to yourself, your energy becomes more aligned. People often try to look expensive without doing the internal work that creates actual value. But when you practice self-respect daily, it becomes visible without you having to announce anything. Over time, these daily practices sculpt the version of you that feels elevated. You start moving differently. You start speaking differently. You start responding differently. The world begins to interpret you as someone who knows their worth, someone who chooses themselves, someone who isn't swayed by pressure or desperation. High-value behavior becomes your default, not because you force it, but because you've practiced it consistently enough to make it part of who you are. And when your value shows up in your habits instead of your performance, you create an expensive-looking presence that feels authentic, powerful, and unforgettable.